purchasing 40 rental properties and property flips, these are the 10 biggest things I wish I had known earlier. Number one, you're not going to retire off of passive income anytime soon. Before I started investing in real estate, I had read all kinds of books, forums, watched endless YouTube videos about the power of passive income in real estate, and that one day when you build up enough properties, you're going to be able to retire off the passive income from your rental properties. The only thing I didn't understand though was the sheer volume of properties that you need in order to do so, and how much money it actually takes to be able to retire off of those rental properties. Let's break the numbers down. So let's say that the average rental property in your market is about $250,000. Well, most people that own rental properties, if they find decent deals, are going to earn between $300 to $500 a month in actual profit after you pay for things like mortgage, taxes, insurance, maintenance, and things like that. Now, let's say that you want to be able to retire in a decent place, be able to eat out some and still be able to travel, and that's going to cost you about $10,000 a month to do so. Well, if you bust out your calculator and you take, let's say $500 a month you're getting from every property, 500, and you want to live off of $10,000 a month, you're going to need 20 rental properties. Now, while that doesn't sound like an insane amount of properties, you have to understand how much money is going to be required or be invested in order to acquire those 20 rental properties. So if each property is an average of $250,000 and you're putting about 20% down payment, because that is about how much you're going to need to put down, each property is going to require a $50,000 down payment. Multiply that by 20 properties, and you have almost $1 million that you have invested in down payments in order to receive that $10,000 a month income. So while you probably could retire off that $10,000 a month, the challenge is coming up with that first $1 million. And yes, there are going to be people on here that talk about things like BRRRR strategies and creative financing and things that don't require as much money down. And that is true, and I talk about that on my channel. For the average person buying the average real estate property or rental property, that is what is going to be required in order to retire off of rental income. And keep in mind, once you get to those 20 rental properties, you're still going to have work to do. Even if you hire a property management company, you're still going to have to manage the property manager, and you're never really going to truly escape and just sit there and do absolutely nothing collecting money. Number two, you're going to get the most amount of cash flow in subprime markets, but it's going to cost you a lot of long-term wealth down the road. Now, I know this from firsthand because my experience in rental properties started in subprime markets in places like small town Ohio. And in these markets, I've been able to get 10, 15, 20% cash on cash returns. The only problem though is even though I've been able to do that, I really missed out on a lot of long-term equity and growth over the years because those property values have not really changed much over time versus really hot markets that really have seen a 50 to 100% increase over the last handful or so of years. Now, the reason I invested in these particular markets was because at the time, I was a freelance worker. I never had a steady job and my income fluctuated. I was lucky to make anywhere between $19,000 a year to $40,000, $50,000 a year on my best years and living in a place like Los Angeles. And so the idea of having an extra $500, $600, $700 a month from a rental property really was a very big thing for me in keeping my income more stable as I continue to grow and expand. But had I just saved up, invested in just one property in a really good market, I would probably have many hundreds of extra thousands of dollars in equity over the last 6, 7+ years. Number three, you will build the most amount of wealth the quickest buying properties in the most desirable areas, but it's going to cost you cash flow. So piggybacking off of number two that we just talked about, if you buy the most prime markets, you're going to get some of the best equity growth over time because these are really hot markets that are going to see the most amount of expansion and property growth. The biggest challenge with these types of markets though is that typically cash flow is near non-existent. And in some markets, like when I lived in LA or places like San Francisco, Miami, New York, you might actually have a negative cash flow situation. And so in these types of markets, what you're really doing is you're playing the equity growth game instead of the cash flow game. So this type of strategy is really going to depend on your actual situation and what matters most. For me, because I was so low income and I had fluctuated income, having that steady income of even $300, $400, $500 extra a month was a lifesaver. But like I said, it cost me a lot of equity growth over time. Had I just bought a really desirable place in the most desirable area that I could afford, I would have probably made many hundreds of more thousands of dollars due to the equity growth. Number 4, you shouldn't even consider buying rental properties until you've mastered your ability to earn more money. This is absolutely something that I wish I had known earlier, because when I first started, I was reading all these books on how to analyze properties, break them down, and all this awesome stuff that you should learn. The problem though is that I didn't make much money. Some years I made $19,000, and my best years I made $40,000 to $50,000 living in Los Angeles. And I got my start by just focusing on living as cheaply as I could, saving as much money as I could. And after so many years, I finally had enough money to put down on my first rental property, and that's what I did. And that finally got me that extra $400 or $500 a month. The problem though is that as soon as I bought that property, I was back to broke. And I had to spend all this time again trying to save up enough money for the next property. And this is what I wish I had done differently. Instead of just focusing on living below my means and just learning how to buy property, I wish I had mastered my ability to earn more money. Fast forward a few years later when I finally started my own business and I started earning over 6 figures a year, completely changed the game for me, because now I kept my lifestyle really low at the time, and I was saving almost as much money in a month as I would take me all year back in the day. And so my ability to acquire properties or purchase flips completely changed. I was able to buy property a lot faster and more frequently. And so instead of trying to figure out how to buy property, if you are not making at least 6 figures or more a year, then I would say don't even worry about buying rental property, because you're really not going to make that much money per month anyways off of it. Spend that time, effort, and the money that you have to invest acquiring new skills. It might be learning high ticket skills. It could mean going and getting a certification, going back and getting a degree of some sort if it makes sense. Or, I talk about this all the time on my channel, find a side hustle or a side business that you can start that will help you earn 2, 3, 4 times more money than you do currently. Like I said, I talk about it below. I'll leave some links below in the description box to some of those videos. And not to mention the fact that once you buy the property and you're broke again, if any major repairs come up unexpectedly, that can really set you back. And so if you're not making a lot of extra income every single month and you can help pay for some of those things as they come about, that can really put you in a pretty bad predicament. Number 5, renovations will always cost more than you expect, and it's always going to take longer than you expect. I've done quite a few rental properties, and I've also done quite a few flips. So you want to try to find something that needs a little bit of work. That way you can force appreciation in some of these properties. The problem though is that the minute you start to repair something, 8 or 9 times out of 10, you're going to find that something else in addition needs repaired. Even if you do things like property inspections, you're going to find things or uncover things that inspectors don't see. A lot of stuff happens behind walls that cannot be seen until you actually dig into it. And so my suggestion would be, if you're setting a budget for maintenance repairs on a rental property, or if you're setting a budget for renovations, I would always add at least 10 to 20% more. If you're expecting this property to be done in about 4 to 6 weeks, you might want to expect a little bit more, like 6 to 8 weeks. Your best case scenario is you're actually right on target, right on budget, and right on time. And so in that case, you've buffered for it. But in a worst case scenario, you've also got yourself covered. Number 6, you're going to earn a lot more money short-term flipping properties, but it's going to cost you a lot of long-term wealth. Here's a perfect example. Back in 2019, heading into 2020, we were just wrapping up a couple of property flips. One was great. We earned like $20,000 in about like 4 to 6 weeks. It was a really great property. But this other one that we did, which I actually have a video for, is a mold-infested house. It was this really big house, completely plastered in mold. I mean, it looked like people were throwing buckets of paint, but it was actually mold. This project probably took 6, 7, 8 months to do. We made a bit of a profit on it, but the thing was, I remember looking not even like a year and a half later at that property. $550,000 property or somewhere around there was literally worth like over $800,000, not even like a year and a half or 2 later. And had we just kept the property and rented it out and maybe refinanced some of our money out, we would have made an astronomically amount more money having held on to it. And if I look at all the properties that I've flipped over the years, had I just kept the property and just held on to it for 5, 10 plus years, I would have made so much more money over time. But if you do more property flipping, you're gonna earn a lot more income right away, but it is gonna cost you some long-term wealth. Number 7, you're always gonna feel like you don't have enough information to get started, so you might as well start anyways. I spent 4 or 5 plus years reading endless books, watching endless YouTube videos, listening to countless podcasts, endless blogs on how to analyze property, how to turn it into a good deal, cash flow, all the terms, pretty much everything that I would need to know. And I just, for some reason, never felt ready. And even though I had enough money, and I probably could have started many years earlier, I kept sitting on the sidelines because I was concerned about what if I mess up? What if I make a mistake? And what I want to tell you is that no matter how much knowledge that you have, number 1 is there's always more knowledge to be acquired. And number 2, no matter how much you know, you're going to make some mistakes. Even as much as I know now, I have still made some mistakes that have cost me some money. And what you're going to find is it's not so much the mistakes that will cost you your ability to build wealth. It's going to be your ability to learn and adapt and keep going, because every single time that you happen to make a mistake, you're going to learn from it a lot faster and a lot more than sitting on the sidelines just trying to analyze things. Now, of course, I'm a huge believer in learn from other people's mistakes instead of making it yourself, and you should do that. But in my opinion, if you have read at least 3 to 5 of some of the top real estate books out there, and you've been learning how to analyze property and stuff, you have more than enough information to get started. You would not believe how many people that I have met over the years that have amassed a pretty large net worth that honestly do not have that much skill or ability on analyzing property or even in real estate. They are just average people just buying property, saving up money, buying property, and just being consistent. Your consistency is what's going to build your wealth, not your crazy in-depth knowledge. Number 8, you want to try to kill the deal a lot more often than you actually try to make the deal work. I remember some advice I was given one time is that you don't want to be in a rush to make a bad investment. The minute you get the idea of buying rental property, you're reading books, you're watching videos, you're reading blogs, you're listening to podcasts, there becomes this feeling of, gotta make this happen, I gotta do it. And if you're not careful, that enthusiasm, which is fantastic, can sometimes really bite you in the butt. Because what will happen is you'll start to find a property that doesn't look like too bad of a property. It's not a terrible deal, but maybe it's just like a very average deal or a very kind of subpar deal. But because it's like your first property or it's the next deal, you get really excited and you start kind of thinking like, well, maybe the maintenance won't be as bad as I think. Maybe I can do this, or maybe the growth will be a little better than I'm anticipating. Every time I analyze a deal, I want to see how bad it can possibly get for me to still accept the deal itself. So you want to actually try to kill the deal in your underwriting. When you're underwriting property, you want to make it as bad as possible to where you're still like, okay, well, definitely not that great of a deal, but it's acceptable at this point. So try to kill the deals more often than you make them work. Being ultra conservative might mean a little bit less volume that you do, but you're going to have home runs and you're going to do very well long-term having really good deals and trying to do a bunch of average deals. Number 9, your money is very illiquid with real estate. While owning rental properties is great and you can definitely build a lot of equity over time and have a really nice net worth, there's a difference between net worth and cash available. And what you may find in your investing career is that over time, there's going to be certain moments in life or during your investing journey that there's going to be a really killer opportunity that has a really massive potential, but it's very time sensitive. One of the biggest issues with putting a lot of money and a lot of investment into real estate is that it's really hard to access that money. If I'm wanting to access the equity or cash that I have in all my properties, I can't just go to the bank and just ask for money like it's like in a bank account. You either have to sell that property or you have to do a refinance, cash out refinance in order to access that money. And this can take anywhere from 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days or longer, depending on if you're selling or refinancing. And if you happen to get an opportunity that's really incredible, whether it be in stock markets, a business opportunity, or it could just be a life opportunity, a chance to go somewhere or visit or whatever, and you need access to that money very quickly because you only have a short window, this can sometimes pose as a problem. So while I still think investing in real estate is great, What I've realized over time is that I want to also have some of my money in very liquid type investments just for really awesome opportunity, because you don't want to have all your money sitting in a property growing at, let's say 4 or 5%, and then some really incredible investment opportunity comes along where you could earn 10, 20, 30, 40, 50+% returns, but you have to do it within a short time window and you can't access this money. This has happened to me on multiple occasions, and had I had access to the money and invested in things that I wish I could have in that short window, I would have made many, many multiple six figures more than I would have had currently, just because my money was not liquid. Or for other people in situations where maybe you have really high expenses and you don't have a lot of money in your savings and all your money is tied in real estate, if you happen to lose your job and you start to get in a negative cash flow situation, this can also pose as a major problem, because you're not going to have access to cash. You're going to have to try to get a refinance. But if you just lost your job, you're not going to be able to refinance with no income currently. And so those are things that you actually really want to think about when you're looking at asset allocation. How much money do you invest in real estate versus how much money you keep liquid? Number 10, you don't actually have to have really high income to qualify for a loan on an investment property. One of the other things that really held me back for quite a while in investing in real estate, besides my over-analysis, was the fact that I was really low income. Like I said, some years I made between $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 living in Los Angeles, and in my best years I might make 40, 50. And while that's an okay income, living in a place like Los Angeles is expensive. And so when I looked at trying to qualify for loans through traditional banks and things, I really just was not going to be able to afford it. When you looked at my car payment and all that other stuff, I didn't have much of a budget to buy rental property. What I didn't understand or realize was there are different things out there for people who have non-traditional income, or let's say you don't have really good debt to income ratios, which is another factor or component in investing in real estate or qualifying for a loan. There are things that are called DSCR loans, which are debt service coverage ratio loans. And the great thing about this is, instead of looking at your personal finances, things like your debt to income ratio, your actual income and things like that, what it does is look solely at the rental property. How much money is it bringing in every month, and how much debt are you going to have to service? And as long as it meets the ratio, even if you personally have really bad debt to income ratio, you can still qualify for a loan. So whether you're lower income, you have bad DTI, you can still get access to a DSCR loan. Now, you're going to maybe pay a little bit more and higher interest rates. The terms sometimes can be a little bit different, but for non-traditional people who don't have 9-to-5 jobs, or people who don't have high incomes, or people who don't have the best debt to income ratios, this can be a fantastic way of getting started in buying rental property. If this video is providing value for you, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, that little notification bell for more videos like this, and also how to make your first $10,000 a month in income through side hustles, in addition to building financial freedom through investing.